Yo, welcome to another episode of Flipping Miami. I am your host, Raul Bolufe. And today I have a very special guest on the other side of the camera here. JR, the guy's a badass. He's a really good friend of mine that we met years ago in a mastermind. And I mean, we connected, man, we clicked. And at first we started talking about travel. He had mentioned he was traveling. This was like 3 or 4 years ago. Traveling over Asia, Southeast Asia, some part of Southeast Asia or something. And after I'm like, dude, tell me about traveling. I've always wanted to do that. And we kind of connected there. And bro, he does wholesale, fix and flip. He owns a bunch of rentals. He has a really interesting philosophy to how he does the business. It's just him and an assistant, or sometimes just him. And he's very lean and makes a ton of net profit. So someone definitely good to learn from. But I want to kind of get into a little bit of his story and what he's doing in business now. But I appreciate you coming on, man. With no further ado, appreciate you, man.
Yeah, man. Good to see you, bro. Thanks for having me.
No problem. I know, JR, I was like texting him and he's like, bro, I don't know, man. I'm not big with like the podcast stuff, but I'll do it for you. I'm like, yes, let's get it.
I've turned down many podcast interview requests. This is the first one that I've ever done. So I have no idea what to expect. I have nothing planned. I have no idea what I'm going to say.
I love it.
Raul's my boy. I want to help you out, and I appreciate you asking me. So let's do it.
Yeah, dude. And I was like hesitant. I'm like, I want to ask you, but I know that it's kind of like not your thing. But I'm like, at the same time, I don't want you to feel like offended that I ask you or something like that. So I'm like, I'm gonna ask him, dude, because what's the worst that can happen?
But yeah, no worries. Yeah, my whole thing is I really like to lay low. I'm not one of those guys that likes to be in the spotlight. There's a lot of guys on Instagram or social media that they want followers, they want a lot of attention, they want the notoriety, and they want to be well known in the industry. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just not my style. I prefer to kind of fly under the radar and just kind of crush it silently. And again, there's nothing wrong with being well known and being in the spotlight and having like a large following. But for me personally, I think it's really cool to be really successful and like no one even knows who you are. I've kind of built my business and my life in a way that I can kind of stay off the radar and lay low a little bit. That's how I like it. I've kind of held back from doing podcasts and stuff, but I'm looking forward to it.
I think that's actually a good reason why, you agreed to come on, because I feel like some of the listeners that'll listen to this and they're maybe your style, more like, I like to lay low. And if they are listening to this, they could probably get a good feel for what your business looks like with that kind of mentality, I think that is a legitimate thing. Like, some people love to lay low and, it's cool. And some people like a little bit more attention, notoriety, like you mentioned. So I think the people that can relate with you might get a lot out of this episode. People are like, you need to lay low, and then they can kind of get a feel from you firsthand.
Yeah. And it's interesting. There's pros and cons to both. I've gone kind of back and forth in my own mind, over the years, like, should I be more public about what I'm doing and what my business is? Because, I remember you and I had a conversation a year or two ago where you're like, you had hired some people that had literally just connected with you on Instagram because they were following you or heard your podcast or something. I've literally sold deals to buyers that I never would have met, most likely, but I heard them on a podcast interview and they were buying properties in my market. And I looked them up and I called them and said, hey man, we should know each other. Let's do some business. And it's like, would I have done those deals with that guy if he hadn't done that podcast? Probably not, So there's benefits to being known. There's pros and cons to both, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. There's pros and cons to both. And I think the big thing to take away from what you're saying, I think, is like to understand yourself and what you really like appreciate and value. And I feel like you have a pretty good grip of like, I get it that there's plenty of people with huge followings and stuff, but that's just not me. And I love it that way, and I'm okay with it that way. Some people I feel are like, should I have a following? And then always like have this internal battle. I have one, should I not? They never really filled with what they have. I think it's be kind of cool to just like, you figure out what you like and don't like, and you just go there. If that's how was that kind of process for you? Like, were you always like, I want to stay under the radar, or did you like sometimes try to be a little bit more like on the scene and you just didn't like it? Or how did that like relationship with that like notoriety come to fruition?
I've always kind of stayed off the radar. So
Okay.
but again, I've gone back and forth about whether or not that's the right thing to be doing, right?
Gotcha.
Because one fundamental rule of business and entrepreneurship is networking. And
Yeah.
if you, I'll put it this way: the more people who know you, like you, trust you,
Yes.
and are aware of what you do for a living, the more business will come to you naturally without
Yes.
you having to go out and look for it, right? So with that, I do post on social media, on my Instagram or my Facebook occasionally. I don't post, I post a small fraction of what I'm actually involved in, but I do post occasionally, hey, check out these before and afters of a fix and flip.
Yeah.
Hey, just picked up this new rental property. I'm really excited about it. Just bought this house cash from a distressed owner. If you know anyone who's looking to sell, hit me up, right? When I post stuff like that on social media, I have people reach out to me sometimes and I get deals, free leads, referrals, whatever it is, that they just come to me naturally because someone saw the post and goes, oh yeah, JR buys houses. Let's give him a call, right? My aunt wants to sell her house. Hey, I'm going to connect you. But that's the benefit of it for me. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not a big, like, I'll put it this way. I can turn on and be personable when I need to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm more of an introvert. I like to be alone. I like to recharge silently without a bunch of people around. And so just having the kind of like humility to just lay low and not flaunt what I'm doing. I like that, and I don't like I don't need the notoriety or attention, and I don't want it. Right?
Yeah.
I do see a lot of guys. I see a lot of guys on social media that they and this isn't to talk bad about anyone who's doing it, but I see a lot of guys on social media flaunting what they're doing. They want to look real successful. They want to be a big shot. And again, that's not to insult anybody who does that, right?
Yeah.
Or who has a large following. But for me, I'd rather be rich than look rich. I want to keep my head down, lay low, stay humble, and just do my thing.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I love that. It's it just shows it's humility for sure. I heard you mention that word, and I forgot what I was reading the other day, but basically like, and I think that attaches a lot to ego and things of that nature. And I would want to get into that a little bit, but I want to take a step back and I think we had a conversation about this a while ago personally, but dude, let's say we would have met in high school. Like, who was JR in high school? You like, did you get great back? Like, did you play sports? Were you popular? Were you not? Like, who was JR in high school? Who would have met? Like, who was that kid?
Sure. So growing up, I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm a Phoenix native. Nice. Growing up, I was pretty book smarts, but I was really street smarts, right? And so I had good grades in school. And the irony of that is I didn't try very hard in school. I kind of winged it most of the time, but I always managed to get good grades and do fairly well in school without having to try, right? Which has been kind of a blessing and a fit in my life, because I feel like sometimes in real estate, even like I don't try that hard and I just do really well.
Bro, we had a conversation like with JR. He has like this good fortune juju around him. I mean, I remember there was I'll share a quick story that I remember. He went on a trip to Vietnam for like, I think a month and a half or something like that.
Yeah.
A month and 6 weeks. And he comes back and like the first deal he does, I call him like, dude, how's the trip? He's like, it was good. Yeah. The first deal I did when I got back was like $80,000. I'm like, what the, like how the hell?
100,000
or 100,000. Bro, he's just, it's some of the stuff that he does. It's crazy, but
yeah, that's like when people ask me what's my superpower, that's usually what I say is I have this uncanny ability. I don't know where it comes from or why I was blessed with it, but I have this uncanny ability to monetize like everything. And I'm extremely calculated and I'm frugal in the way that I spend money and invest money and do things. But I have this ability to capitalize on kind of just everything, every opportunity that I can find. And I'll create opportunities out of thin air. Like, I won't have any marketing going out or any leads, and I'll somehow like get deals and make a ton of money on them. All like a couple years ago, I bought this deal, and it was a bad deal. It was not a good deal. And after I closed on it, I was like, I tried to sell it and I couldn't sell it. I couldn't wholesale it. I took it down. I put it on MLS. I couldn't sell it. It didn't really work as a fix and flip. And I'm like, this is a bad deal. And I've never lost money on a deal, bro. So I'm like, I can't, like, fundamentally, I can't be okay with losing money on a deal. So I'm like, I got to figure something out. I ended up doing a lease option, turn this bad deal into like a phenomenal deal. I still have at least 2 years in now. I've recouped 30% of the capital I invested in the house off of a down payment and 2 years lease payments. Wow. So they're supposed to close on that one at the end of this year. But it's like, those are the kind of things that people are like, how do you do that? I'm like, I don't know. It's just like, I refuse to lose money, and I just try and get creative and strategic and tactical in the way that I do things and approach things so that I can create value wherever I go.
Yeah, you kind of like, it sounds to me like you kind of like wired yourself like little by little over time to like just make lemonade out of lemons type of thing, you know, like probably little by little over time you're like, man, you know, this life is short. I have to make everything as good as possible. I don't know, it's some kind of theory that you kind of come up with, and like little by little, like it came into life, and now every deal that comes your way or every offer is like your brain is triggered. Shit, that's a good opportunity. I'm jumping on. Damn, that's a deal. Let's get it. You know, like you kind of have that like intuition, which is so cool.
For sure. And going and to tie that back into what we were just talking about, growing up in high school and everything. I grew up in, I would say, a lower middle class family. My parents were not rich by any means. We weren't necessarily poor, but we didn't have a lot, right? And my parents worked really, really hard to provide what we did have. And I remember when I was young that, you know, we moved to Scottsdale. And for anyone familiar with the Scottsdale area, it's a really nice area in Arizona. And it's, you know, real estate's expensive there. Yeah. And it's kind of a high class area. And my family didn't necessarily fit in, right? We were like lower middle class. Scottsdale's more of an upper class, demographic. And so, you know, I remember my dad and my parents like stressing about paying bills and having money issues. And there was a lot of stress in my household about that, about finances. And I remember like from a really young age, kind of observing, sitting back and observing that and making a very conscious decision that my life was going to be different, that I was not going to settle for mediocrity, and I was not going to allow myself to be in that position later in life where I had to stress about whether or not I could pay bills or cover the mortgage or provide for my kids. Like that was like a really stressful thing on my parents and on my family, and I wasn't going to live like that. And as I've gotten older, you know, the more that's been reinstilled in me that there's a difference between living and living well. And I just refuse to settle for mediocrity. And while I find that it's, you know, one of the keys to being happy in life is to be grateful for what I have and to be content, there's a difference between being content and grateful and being satisfied. And I am one of those people, I am never satisfied. I want more. Yeah. I want my life to get better. You know, I want to live an extraordinary life and have freedom like no one has, you know? And I was never willing to settle or compromise on that. And it's paid off big time, you know? Yes. And I'm still like, I'm far from where I want to be, but I'm doing well, and I'm grateful for where I'm at. And it's, you know, I'm grateful for the journey and all the learning experiences that I've had along the way. And I'm excited for where I'm headed.
Yes. You know? That's when I think that's the key nuggets in what he just spoke about. Like, first off, he made a decision, you know, like he sat there, who knows how old you were, maybe let's call it 15, 16, 18 years old. You sat there and you looked at your situation, and, you know, although there was probably some gratitude of like, okay, I'm happy I have parents and a home stuff, but you made a decision like, this is not for me. Like, I know I could do better, right? And that can be in finances and happiness or health, whatever. And you made a decision, and then little by little, you kind of like figured your way through. But like so many key nuggets in what you just said. And I don't know, what I'm getting at is everyone's got their own journey, right? And it starts with a decision usually to the better life. And once you start getting excited for where you're going next, I feel like that's almost like the best part of your life. You know, like every day I wake up and you probably wake up like excited, dude. Like, okay, like there's new deals to be done. There's money to be, there's money to be made. There's money to be raised. There's opportunities to be had. There's just so many different things, right? And it just gets exciting, you know. And I feel like everyone. Part of the reason I do this podcast is I feel like everyone should listen to people that are in that stage of their life to one day feel that and be that.
Yeah, and that's so important. Steve Jobs has a great quote that I love. And I'll paraphrase because I don't know it exactly, but he says something along the lines of, when you're passionate about what you're doing, you don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls you. And I identify with that because, you know, I was involved in a few different business ventures before I got into real estate. And like, you know, I feel so blessed to do what I do. Like, it's like a game, bro. Like we're so lucky to be in this business and to do what we do. Like, and it could, you know, for a lot of people, it could be anything. It could be cars, it could be stocks, it could be real estate, whatever it is. Right. So my advice for listeners would be to find that thing that you're passionate enough about, that waking up and being deprived of sleep, waking up at 5 a.m. and on a Monday, or working on a Sunday in the evening when everyone else is, you know, watching Everybody Loves Raymond, like that's not a big deal, you know, that you'll happily sacrifice to pursue your dreams because you love what you do. And that's really important, you know? So that's one thing.
So I love that. I love that. Yeah. I mean, look, and you're not going to love everything. I don't have all the answers by any means, but from what I've gathered and talking to like successful people like JR, dude, you're not going to love every part of your business, or you're not going to love any part of any business. There's going to be some things you're like, crap, I have to drive to that appointment 45, you know, like, but for the most part, if you're excited to do what you do, I think you're on the right track. And if you're not, that's okay. There's many people in that situation, but you should just be aware of it and start figuring out if maybe there's something else out there for you. You understand? And I think like Jared said it well. So Jared, what was like that turning point of, you're leaving high school, you're kind of figuring out what you're going to do. Did you like go into college? Did you get a job? Did you like leaving high school? Did you know what you wanted to do for the rest of your life? Like, did you think like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor, lawyer? Like, did you have any of that in mind or no?
I had no idea. When I was young, I wanted to be a lawyer. That was kind of my goal. But in high school, I think that kind of changed. And I remember my dad in high school telling me to, you know, my dad is a business owner. Okay. He works on cars for a living. And he worked really hard, and he wasn't a failure by any means. But his business wasn't super successful. And he was a one-man operation. He worked really, really hard. And I think some of the challenges of entrepreneurship really kind of wore him down, right? And because there's a lot of things that people don't think about. There's a great book called E-Myth Revisited that I recommend to anyone thinking about going into business, or if you're new in business, you got to read that book. Okay. It basically talks about the challenges of entrepreneurship and why so many small businesses fail. And it's because when you go into business for yourself, you might be really good at some trade or some craft or something, right? And once you go into business for yourself, you're no longer just doing that thing. You're doing that thing, but you've also created a dozen other jobs for yourself that you have no fucking clue how to do, right? So now you have all these other logistics that you have to deal with and manage and oversee, and it's really easy to fail. Anyway, my dad told me in high school that I was better off to just get a good job that pays well, has good benefits.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, that's not what I want for my life, though. Like, I don't want to have to answer to someone else, and I want to get really, really rich. I just didn't see that happening through a 9-to-5. I just didn't see it. So I had this idea in high school that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be a business owner. I wanted to figure out how to create some kind of value for the world, or for the community. But I didn't really know what that looked like. Right.
Yeah.
And in high school, I played football in high school. I played some sports when I was younger. I am innately competitive, and I don't like to lose. And I work really, really hard at whatever I do, but I work twice as hard if there's someone right next to me that I'm competing with. And anyway, so I played football in high school. And I started to party a lot in high school. There's a little bit of personal information about me, but I got heavily into drugs when I was in high school. After high school, I went to ASU for college. I did one semester there. I wouldn't even say I did a semester or attended I was for a
You
semester.
enrolled it.
I had my head up my ass, dude. I was partying and I was involved in all kinds of nonsense and getting into a lot of trouble. And to be honest with you, drug addiction really kind of took over my life at that point. And by the time I was 22, I was homeless and addicted to drugs, and my family wouldn't allow me in their home. So that's where that path led me. That was my experience, but not, just proud to say today, I've been clean from all drugs and alcohol over 13 years now.
Amazing.
And obviously turned my whole entire existence around and reconnected with my family and all that over the years. And my relationship with them has never been better. But at 22 years old, I was homeless. I was living in my car and kind of couch surfing and just doing all kinds of crazy things to survive. But when I struggled with addiction for a number of years. And in those years, I tried to get help on several occasions. I got arrested a lot, and I was kind of in and out of treatment programs and different things. And when I was 22, it finally stuck. I say it stuck, but really I committed myself to the process of recovery. And so once I committed myself to that process and started to heal, I worked a job at a restaurant. And I had this entrepreneurial spirit that just wouldn't go away, right? So I was working in a restaurant in the evenings, and during the day, I started a pool cleaning service. And it started with one friend that convinced her mom to hire me, and then another friend whose parents hired me, and another friend whose parents hired me. And then I started I had this little pool route, just a few pools. And then I started just doing some organic, I'd get referrals, or I did some marketing. I kind of grew that business. I grew it to the point where I was able to leave my restaurant job and just focus on the pool service business. Right. So I built my pool business for a number of years, just like a few years. And then because I had some past legal problems with my driver's license and stuff, I had to actually sell that business.
Really?
I had a driver's license. Yeah. The first 5 years that I was, in recovery, I had a suspended driver's license, and I got pulled over a few times when I was out working on pools.
Oh, got it.
The judge eventually, after a number of times getting pulled over, the judge told me, "We're going to put you in jail if you keep driving."
Damn.
I kind of got to this point where I was like, it was a really bittersweet moment for me in the end. But at the time, I was devastated because I have this business that I've worked so hard to create. I'm pursuing something that I was really excited about, and I worked really hard toward. And I have to drive to run this business. There's no other way to do it, right?
Yeah. And there wasn't any Uber back then.
There was no Uber. I tried hiring some kid to drive me around. I had trouble finding people who were reliable, or they just didn't stick around. So my pools had to get done. So I'd be out driving and I'd get pulled over. Anyway, so I had to sell the pool business. And at the time I was really upset about that because I had worked so hard to build it. But, once I started marketing the business and my pool route, and I found out what it would sell for, then it wasn't so bad. Make some money from that. Now, really? Yeah. And now I'll say this now, the amount of money that I made at the time was a huge amount of money for me. It was more money I had ever had. Now it doesn't seem like a lot of money. Okay. Right, yeah. Okay. But at the time it was very exciting. I never had more than a couple $1,000s in the bank. So to sell and have, 5 figures liquid cash in my bank account was a really big deal for me.
Wow.
So I sold that business, and I took about 6 months to just kind of figure out what my next move was going to be. I got a puppy. He's actually here in my office somewhere.
Is that the dog you still have?
I have 2 dogs. Yeah. And they come to the office with me every day. They hang out here. But anyway, Dozer's laying around here somewhere. He was my puppy at the time. I got a puppy, and I just kind of reflected on what I wanted to do next. And I came across a job opportunity at a behavioral health organization. It was treatment center for drug addiction and mental health and stuff like that. And so I took a job there at the very bottom, base salary of $10 an hour. And
no.
I worked there for 3 or 4 years. I worked my way up. By the time I left that facility, I was, running one of the facilities in Mesa. I'd become a manager, and I was managing a staff of 30 and dealing with stuff. That job, I was making maybe $40,000 a year, and I was burnt out. It's a high burnout field. It's a really difficult job to maintain because you have staff that's burnt out. You have patients that are stressful to deal with. You see a lot of the same stuff over and over again, and it's tough to see. People.
It's kind of like it's a lot of like low energy, low vibration type things.
Yeah. You're exposed to a lot of suffering on a daily basis, and it's painful to watch, but it's also gratifying to give back and help others, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, I realized, during that time, I wasn't quite sure that was going to be the thing that I wanted to, sorry about that. That wasn't quite going to be the thing that I wanted to do with my life, right? So I was kind of, again, putting feelers out, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I started doing some like online product sales and stuff. Like I was buying stuff from China and having it shipped here and selling it on eBay and trying some different things, just sort of figuring out what might make sense for me.
And how old were you? How old were you at this point?
I was probably 24. This is like 2010, 2011, right? I sold my pool business in 2009. I 2010 maybe, or no, 2009. I don't, the years are getting mixed up on me, but around like 2010, 2011, I'm looking for new opportunities, trying to figure out what my next move is. And around that time, I had 2 really good friends who kind of approached me. Now, one of these friends was in real estate. He's my age. He got into real estate when we were 18 years old. He had like his family was in real estate. So he started kind of following in their footsteps. And he had been buying and selling homes at trustee sale, which is the foreclosure auctions down on the courthouse steps in Phoenix. And he was doing really well with it. He was doing like really well, right? The market had crashed in 2008, and those next couple of years, houses were it was a free for all. You could buy houses at trustee sale for 20, 30 grand. Wow. He was wholesaling 4 or 5 of them a day, right out of trustee sale. There wasn't quite the same spreads that we get on deals now. He was making $2 to $5 grand a deal, but he was doing several deals a day, and hundreds of deals a year. And he was also keeping a bunch of them and building a rental portfolio at the time. So he's a young guy, right? We were like 25 years old at the time. So anyway, that's what he was involved in. And that looked really attractive to me. I kind of liked what he was doing, but I didn't know a single thing about real estate. Meanwhile, I've got another buddy who had just moved back to Arizona. We were childhood friends. He had just moved back to Arizona, and he had made a fortune in internet marketing. He did like online products and different things. He built a software cleaning or a PC cleaner software and was like selling that online. He's just like a genius, like a computer genius. And he was doing his thing was internet marketing. He was like, didn't matter what the product was, internet marketing. He could sell it, he could make money. And he had made millions of dollars, and he had cash, and he wanted to start investing the cash somewhere, but he didn't know what to do with it. So my real estate buddy wanted to start selling houses as a rental portfolio to my internet buddy, right? And the issue was my internet buddy didn't know much about real estate, and he didn't want to deal with the day-to-day operation of running a real estate business. He wanted to focus on his internet business and have someone else kind of delegate the day-to-day of the real estate to someone else. So these 2 guys approached me together, and they said, hey, we're all friends. We trust you. We know you're smart. We know you're capable. Would you have any interest in managing or overseeing this real estate operation if he starts buying houses? And basically what that entailed was hiring contractors and managing renovations at these properties, we had a property management company, but I was going to be the liaison between the owner and the property management company. So kind of overseeing the property management of these things, helping to identify what the rent should be and who to approve and not approve, and just the day-to-day approving repairs, whatever it was, right? Also sourcing the properties. When my buddy would bring us a deal, I would kind of make the decision on whether or not we would buy it. Keep in mind, I know nothing about real estate at this point. Absolutely zero. And but it sounded like an interesting opportunity. I said, yeah, that sounds kind of cool. I'll do that. And so I made a deal with my buddy. We kind of figured out what the payment arrangement was going to be. And, honestly, Raul, like I look back and I'm like, I didn't make any money from that. Like the amount of time that I spent working on that, I was like negative on like what I was making. Yeah, I was making nothing, right? It was I made a tiny percent. I made a flat fee for every remodel that was completed, which I oversaw, and then I made a tiny percentage of the gross rental income for the month. And it was not a lot of money. It didn't add up to much. But what I typically I look back at that and I tell people now, if I could go back and do it over, I would do it for free. I learned so much, dude. I went into that knowing nothing about real estate. The first year, he bought 30 single family homes. And I managed remodels on nearly all of them that needed fixing up. And I oversaw leasing and all the stuff that goes into that. And I made a ton of mistakes. And I cost him money. I made bad decisions on remodels. I hired contractors on Craigslist and got ripped off a bunch of times. I mean, I fucked up over and over again. And I learned on his dime how to build a multi-million-dollar rental portfolio. And that is called intellectual capital, and it's invaluable, right? So sometimes, when people are new, right, they want to make all the money, they see the success, they want to drive the fancy car and have the bank account. And I'll tell you what, man, sometimes just getting connected to people who are doing it or who have become successful or take a job even where you don't make anything, intern, volunteer, whatever, get yourself around people where you're in a position to learn. Yes. And that's like, dude, that's more valuable than any paycheck.
I love that. Dude, that is so key. That is so key.
Yeah. So I did that with him for years. I managed. And so as I was starting it, I loved it, man. It was like fascinating for me. So again, I was working nights at this facility in Mesa. And during the day, I'm out driving properties. I'm in Maryvale and driving houses in the ghetto and like going to check on contractors and meet with vendors and property management, all the different stuff that goes into it. And I'm like building this portfolio of rental homes for someone else and just like learning the ropes,
Wow.
And so I learned a ton that first year. And I decided that I really loved the process and I saw what the potential was as far as income and lifestyle. And that was really attractive to me. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to get more involved in this. So I signed up for real estate school and started taking my classes. So I'm taking real estate. Literally, I'm driving properties during the day, dealing with managing the remodels. I'm going to real estate school in the afternoon. I'm going to work the night shift. While I'm working, I'm in the back office studying my real estate notes, getting ready to take this test. I mean, it's just a whole thing. And then what happened next is really kind of extraordinary. I was kind of struggling, to be honest with you. I was pretty much done with real estate school, and I was studying and I was preparing to take my test. I was really unhappy in my job that was full time at the behavioral health center, but I was terrified of leaving that job. I could not support myself on the income I was making, managing this rental portfolio for my buddy, and I didn't, the license and like I'm new to investing. I don't know if I'm going to have any income. And I remember having a conversation with my other buddy, the real estate guy, he's one of my best friends and he's been a mentor for me. And today we're peers in the industry. We're business partners. We own several, commercial properties together and stuff like that. But I remember having a conversation with him and he's one of the wisest people that I know. And I was explaining that I was really struggling with the idea of leaving the job because the uncertainty of not getting paid consistently was just kind of terrifying. And I didn't know if the real estate thing was going to take off for me and I was going to be able to replace my income or surpass my income. That's the goal, obviously, but there's no guarantees. And he said to me, JR, he said, it's like jumping off a cliff, base jumping. His brother was big into base jumping at the time. He said, it's like base jumping. When you jump off that cliff, you just have to trust that the parachute's going to open. And some people are not comfortable trusting in that parachute. So they stay on firm ground. Other people are willing to take that leap of faith. And that's the difference between people who own businesses and people who work for them. And I never forgot that because it spoke about risk and risk tolerance and, risk versus reward and, playing it safe, man. It's not for me.
Dude, that's amazing.
I'd say I'm fairly conservative. I probably play it sometimes safer than I should in the business, but like I've missed a lot of great opportunities because I was too conservative and I passed on a deal that I should have gone forward with, or I skipped an opportunity that I was afraid of. And in hindsight, I'm like, man, those all were great opportunities that whatever. But I loved that he said that, and I believed in that. And I was trying to build up the courage to take that leap of faith. And what that means is I was trying to get the balls to quit my job and pursue real estate full time. And it wasn't happening. I was scared to let go of that paycheck, man. And the most amazing thing happened to me. There was a situation at my job where, it's a long story, I won't get into the details, but a patient stole a cell phone from a staff member. The staff member called the cops and got, collected. The patient came back and repaid her for the phone. It was a whole thing. I was the manager on duty when that happened, and I didn't put a stop to it. Not the stealing of the phone, but the repayment of it, because I thought, oh, he stole her phone. He should pay her back, right? Well,
fair enough.
I was like, yeah, you deserve it. You should pay her back. You stole her phone, So anyway, I got called into HR right after that happened. Apparently, a monetary transaction between a staff member and a patient is 100% illegal. And the staff member violated HIPAA by calling the cops. And since I was the manager on duty and the kid's grandparents complained, heads had to roll. And I got fired from that job. I was valued at that company, and I got fired from that job. And they were like, sorry to do it. But when they called me in and said, hey, we're really sorry to tell you this, but we have to let you go because heads have to roll and you were the manager on duty. I was like,
no,
thank you. I was like, I literally was like, wow, like this is some power greater than me doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. Because now I was in a position where, guess what? It's sink or swim, baby. I am forced to figure it out in real estate or go get another job. And I wasn't going to go get another job. So from that day on, I studied my ass off. I took the real estate exam. A lot of people take that test, take it several times before they pass it. I didn't want to take it twice. I studied until I was like really, really confident that I would not have any issues. And I passed it the first time.
Nice.
From there, I started working with my real estate buddy, and I started brokering deals for him on MLS. At that time, there was just a plethora of short sales and REO. Anyone who doesn't understand what that is, REO means real estate owned. It means a bank-owned property. Properties that have been taken back in foreclosure, and they are selling the properties at a discounted price. Short sales are where the seller still owns the property, but the property is worth less than what they owe on their mortgage. And so the bank makes a deal with them to allow them to sell the property for less than what they owe and let them out of the lien. Okay. And so we are just buying and selling a ton of those. So again, I'm like brokering deals for him. So here I am, I'm managing this rental portfolio. I'm brokering deals for my buddy. Now I'm a full-time realtor, and I was loving it, man. And again, we're talking about deals, it was a very different market back then. I got my real estate in 2012. So 2012, 2013, 2014, the houses in the Phoenix market were still, they were 40, 50 grand. It wasn't like
crazy.
3% of 40 grand. It's not a lot of money. You know what I'm saying? You're talking about like $1,000, $1,200 or whatever. So it's like, I wasn't making a killing, but I did pretty well because I had some volume. We were doing a lot of deals. But again, I had proximity to my real estate buddy, and I got to watch him and be involved in deals that he was doing, buying and selling real estate day after day. And so I got to see how he analyzed deals and flipped properties and negotiated and all these different things. And that was like, just again, invaluable experience for me. I'm forever indebted to this guy and grateful for what he taught me and the opportunities that these two guys gave me. So I learned a shitload in those first couple of years. And of course, nobody wants to work for other, like, again, I got into real estate because I didn't want to work for anyone else. So I didn't want to keep just working for them forever. My goal very quickly was like, I want to start doing what they're doing. I want to be buying these properties and flipping these properties and doing it for myself. And so um, I bought my first rental. Once I started making a little bit of money, I started saving up, and I bought my first rental property in 2013. It was a single family home in a part of town called Maryvale, which anyone who knows the Phoenix market, not, good area, bad area is all very subjective. I'll put it this way, to the majority of people, it's not a very good area, right? I'm not scared of Maryvale. I'll buy there any day of the week, but it's not a great area. And a lot of crime, a lot of, it's kind of run down. Back then it was way worse than it is now. But I bought my first house in Maryville for $53,500. Okay.
Wow.
The house needed some work. I got a hard money loan. I put down, around 10 grand or whatever. I financed, I think 42,000 on it. And it needed about $10,000 worth of fix up. And at that time, all I had to my name was $20,000. So here I am, like, whatever, approximately 20 grand. That was my entire net worth, essentially.
Funny.
That was my entire liquidity, right? That was all the money that I had. And so I put down, approximately 10 grand on the property to buy it. I put up 10 grand for rehab, and I fixed it up. And I'll never forget the day that I signed the paperwork to buy that house, right? I knew that I was going to spend essentially all the cash that I had on this one house. And I said to my buddy, my real estate buddy, I said, well, I'm broke now. And he said something to me that I've never forgotten, and it's really meaningful. He said, actually, JR, you're richer than you've ever been. And that to me was such an insightful and valuable shift in perspective, because that right there was a defining moment for me. That's the difference between your average Joe and an investor.
Dude, that's so good. That guy sounds like Gandhi, by the way, your friend, your real estate buddy.
He's my boy. He's 10 times more successful than I am. And he's also 10 times more low key than I am.
Really?
He's a badass. I love him. He's one of my best friends. We grew up together. And like I said, in business, he's been a mentor, and we work together. And today we're business partners. We own real estate together. And he's a great guy.
Wow.
But, go ahead.
Dude, there's just it's such an incredible story. And I kept saying, wow, because everyone comes from a different scene. Everyone comes from a different light, different family. Some people come from a very poor family, middle class, wealthy. It doesn't really matter. What matters is kind of the journey to discovering how you're going to get to your success or your own good life. And there was if anyone were to give up, it would have been you. You come from a lower middle class family. You didn't even go to college. You're enrolled, but you didn't really go. You didn't have any and this is not an offensive thing. You just didn't really have successful things coming your way on paper. You understand? And then you got involved in some of those bad things that consumed a couple of years of your life, and then little by little, you still never gave up that thought from when you were in your house thinking I'm not going to be I don't want to be that mediocre thing. You never gave that thought up. And that's the important part. You just kind of trigger, you put triggers in your brain by making those little micro decisions. I'm still not giving up. I know I'm messed up right now. I know I'm in a job, but I'm going to figure this out. And then dude, your real estate buddy comes along, your internet buddy comes along, and it kind of, I don't know how, I don't want to get into religion or energy or anything too philosophical, but I heard you mention it was some kind of higher being. And I think that there was just something in the universe that is kind of working for your favor for whatever reason. No one really knows, but I think just a beautiful way of being able to tie where we're at, where you wanted to go, and friends to not using them, but having your friends be almost your advocates to get there. It's just there's so many good things. I feel we'll have these opportunities on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. But sometimes if you're not mentally decision that you want to achieve that and that you deserve that achievement, you don't take opportunities like that. Does that make sense? But I feel you always knew inside, I deserve these opportunities. I could be that successful person. I want to give back. I want I want to help. I feel like I can make a dent in my world, in my sphere.
For sure. Yeah. And there's a few important things you just mentioned, and that I just want to touch on real quick. You know, the whole idea of like, okay, it was, let's call it unlikely for someone like me to be successful, right? And there's people, you know, who have it way worse than I did growing up, right? That are way more successful than I am. You know, dude, there's, with heart and passion and strategy, there's just like the opportunities are limitless, right? And I think that as human beings, we all struggle with self-defeating thoughts and behaviors. We all struggle with insecurities and, you know what I'm saying, confidence issues. That's just like a part of being human. Someone asked me literally yesterday, they said, man, you know, you seem like you have it so together, and like, you know, you're confident and you're successful, and like you just have like this awesome life. Like, do you ever feel like you're unworthy? Do you ever feel like things aren't going to go your way? And I'm like, dude, all the time. That's part of the human condition. That's not just like some people. That's my belief. I think everyone struggles with that to some extent. Even the most successful people in the world, they still have those thoughts. The difference is, how do they respond to those thoughts, right? Do they buy into them and let them consume them and believe them? Or do they stop those thoughts and say, you know what? I'm not going to convince myself that the lie is the truth. I'm going to replace that fucked up self-defeating thought with a positive affirmation or the truth about some of my strengths. And that's really important, right? Just in our own thought patterns, because, you know, the way we think is going to determine how we feel, and how we feel is going to determine how we act, and how we act is going to determine everything else, our character, and stuff, and our legacy, and what we end up doing with our life, you know? So it all starts with thoughts. I'm involved in, you know, I meditate on a daily basis. I exercise regularly. I do a lot of self-care things that are really important to me to maintain a positive outlook and a healthy state of mind. And my life's not perfect by any means, and neither is my routine or my brain, but I do everything I can to stay healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and be content, you know, as much as possible. The other thing you mentioned, it is about, you know, using friends or network to, like, you know, help each other and all that. So like, that's a really important thing too. And I mean, you hear everybody talks about this, that, you know, somebody told me once, you know, show me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are. Right. That you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, you know, and if those 5 people aren't making you better in some way, you know what you need to do. Right?
I like the way you put that.
Yeah. So I'm very selective about who I spend my time with, who I allow into my world, whose energy I expose myself to, because that shit's crucial, man. Negativity and toxic people who are always bitching, they can't get rights, and nothing ever goes my way, and this and that, and they're a victim, and nothing's their fault. Dude, those people are like fucking cancer. Stay the fuck away from them, right? I like people who are empowered and intelligent and accountable and motivated and like doing something positive with their life, or at least trying to.
At least trying. Yeah. And something to add on, I think it's an awesome way to put it. It doesn't mean that like JR doesn't hang out with people that aren't wealthy or successful. It just means that he wants people who have their mind in a place that it's either on their way to their journey. You might, you know, like I have some friends that are like, they're not like financially the richest people, but they're really good at specific things. Like, you know, I have a friend that's a police officer, but he's like you know, he loves his shit. You know, like he is so passionate about being in the force and all that. And it doesn't mean that he's, you know, wealthy, but just like that, that kind of like empowerment and the way that they carry themselves in their mind of like, dude, I'm going to be the best cop I could be, you know, like that is attractive as far as like the way you can go. And I think the way you put that is so good. And like, you know, your friends and dude, it's just, it's almost like common sense, right? It's like human psychology. If you're around people that suck, you know, mentally, you know, when I say suck, I mean like they think everything's about to go wrong. They mean, you know, they're just like negative all the time. What do you expect? Like, what can you expect to come out of that?
Yeah. And honestly, it doesn't even have to be related to income or business or any of that, right? Just people that are trying to better themselves physically, mentally, spiritually. You know, it's really important. The way I would sum it up is that when I'm selective about who I spend my time with.
Yes.
I focus more on principles than personalities.
Principles. I love that. That's a good little. That's a cool little like Facebook quote right there, man.
Principles before personalities.
Dude, that's so sick, man. Those like I love that story, man. I'm so glad you came on to kind of share that. And he's never done this with anybody, so I think it's number one. If you're listening to this, I'd rewind it and listen again, because if you really like listen, there's so many little tidbits of it that are very relatable and applicable to you wherever you are in your life or in your business. Kind of really starting from the bottom and coming up. And it's like he mentioned, like no one's perfect. You know, he's not claiming to have the perfect brain or the perfect life or the most success, but he's super happy where he's at. He's content. You know, JR, you know, I won't mention any figures because I don't know him either way, but I know JR makes a lot of money. And also JR travels. Like he that's what he loves to do. He travels like, dude, I don't know, 4 to 6 months out of the year, every year, no, something like that.
Yeah. Last year I was gone about 6 months, 6 months out of the year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude. So
all over the world. I was in Vietnam for 6 weeks. I was in Japan and Turkey, Bahamas, Cayman Islands, all over the U.S. Yeah,
yes.
it's
So
good.
let's just
We'll talk about that more. That's a big
yeah.
part of the story too. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But
Yeah.
I guess so. Just back to this story. Let me wrap up kind of where I was at. So I bought this rental property in 2013, first one. I did my first fix and flip in 2014, right? And I in 2015 is when I did my first wholesale deal. Now, you know, when I say like my buddy was wholesaling properties out of trust deal sale, it was very different than the logistics of how I wholesale today, right? He was buying at the courthouse steps a foreclosure property, which basically when you bid on a property at the courthouse, you have to give them, if you win the bid, you have to give them a $10,000 cashier's check on the spot. It's non-refundable, and you have 24 hours to come up with the rest of the money to buy that property. And if you don't come up with the money, you give you 10 grand, we sell it to the next highest bidder. And so, you know, he was actually buying properties and then selling them like the next day or keep turning it into a rental. Whereas today, you know, we kind of, the process looks really different. I'll still buy stuff at trustee sale once in a while, but they're few and far between. There's not a whole lot of great deals there, in my opinion, or at least I'm just not that focused there. I buy direct from seller majority of the time. I pull stuff off MLS occasionally, and I get a ton of referral. But I'll sign a contract to purchase a property, and I will either assign it to another buyer, to an end buyer, who's then going to fix and flip it or hold it as a rental or do whatever they do with it. If I can't assign it, then I may rehab it and fix and flip it. I may just buy it myself and put it on the MLS, which is called a wholesale deal. Or I may, you know, actually take it down and keep it as a rental and put it into my portfolio. But 2015, I started wholesaling properties, and I basically, I would find deals on MLS, because now at this point, I kind of know enough about the process and how to do these transactions. My buddy, again, was actually buying them and then reselling them. We weren't doing assignments at all back then. Like, it was weird. Like, I don't know if he just didn't know how to, or that it was just not how he did it. Yeah, but I was like not familiar with assignments back then at all. And assignments are way simpler, and you save thousands on closing costs.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay all the closing costs and then sell it to someone else and they pay closing costs. You just, you know, in an assignment, you pass all the closing costs on to the end buyer.
Yeah.
But anyway, in 2015, I started finding some deals either on MLS or off market, one way or another. And I would like find a deal, and it was like, I would sign a contract to buy the house, and I didn't have the money to buy the house, but I would go to my buddy and be like, I think this is a deal. Like, can you help me sell this? And he would go, yeah. And then he would sell it in 2 seconds, and we would close on it and we would sell it. And we would split the profit 50-50. And I remember I did a bunch of those with him. And then I started getting to the point where it was like, I want to be able to do this on my own, you know?
Yeah.
And although I still work with him, and obviously we still have a great working relationship, I wanted to be self-sufficient, not have to rely on someone else for any part of the transaction. I don't like relying on people for anything. So I found that I remember this one deal where it was like, again, I had like this mindset shift where it was like, I don't need anyone's help anymore. I got a deal, but I will say doing JV deals with other people who are experienced, again, invaluable.
Oh my
Because
God, the
you
best.
find out about the process. If you can find a deal, but you don't know how to sell it or where to sell it or who to sell it to or what the paperwork looks like, give it to Raul, give it to me, give it to someone in your market who's
Yeah,
doing
bro.
deals and can kind of streamline that back end of the process for you. And do that until you know how to do the whole thing yourself.
Yeah. I
Better to
hear
know how to do
sometimes,
it than not, you know?
yeah, and I don't mean to budget, but I hear sometimes like some they're like, oh, I'm looking for deals. Like, dude, when if you deal and you need help with a buyer, send it to me. He's like, "Yeah, but I just want to find the buyer myself and I'll do it all myself." I'm like, dude,
Good
if you
luck.
notice it and you listen to, yeah, good luck. If you listen to my show and I've interviewed some rock stars and JR at the top of that, dude, everyone has said when they started, they JV deals. Everyone, like every single person has said, even, Ken Clothier, all these guys, like they all JV deals because a simple way, yeah, you might lose out on, let's say 5K, 3,000, 10,000 even, but who cares? Like your learning experience that's going to take you, to make millions. So I think that was just like a really good thing to touch up on.
For sure. So I did this one deal where I found the deal. It
All
was an
right.
off-market deal. It was actually a guy in my neighborhood came and knocked on my door because he knew I was doing real estate. And he was like frantic, like, hey, my house is going to trustee sale. It's going into foreclosure for a tax lien auction in
Wow.
3 days. Like I have to sell it tomorrow. And it was urgent. And so I went over, I looked at it, we made a deal. I'm like scrambling. And I started calling buyers that I know. Because at this point, I've started building relationships. That's another thing I'll touch on real quick,
Yeah.
dude. Everything in this business is relationships, relationships, relationships.
Yeah.
They say location, location, location. That's true, but also relationships, relationships. So important. You never know where a lead will come from, a buyer, a private money lender. I mean, there's endless opportunities, and if you're just open to talking to people and getting to know
Yes.
them and like creating some kind of value for them in their life and business, you can monetize all those relationships. So anyway,
Oh yeah.
I started building relationships with a lot of different people, and I knew some guys that were buying houses to flip. And so I I sent the deal to the guys that I knew, and he was like, yeah, we'll take a look at this and let you know. And then I was like, I got to sell it. It's going to foreclosure in 2 days. Like, I don't have much time. And I called my buddy and I said, can you sell this? And he goes, yeah. And he sold it in 10 minutes. I mean, literally, not even 10 minutes.
Dude, this guy's the best.
He's legit. And he called me back, said it's sold. I said, okay, cool. And then my other buddy, the guy that I had sent it to first, called me and said, hey, I'll take it. And I said, oh, we just sold it. And I realized that deal was a $10,000 assignment, right? Which at the time was huge. Now, I do regularly, I do 30 and 40 and $50,000 assignments. So a $10,000 assignment, not a huge deal in today's market, but at the time it was like a huge amount of money to make on one deal. And I had to split half that with my buddy. And I was like, man, I could have sold that one on my own. I didn't actually need him. Like I realized after, and I never go back on a deal. I don't retrade. I wasn't going to tell him, well, no, I'm selling it to this other guy because I can make more. That's a real fast way to destroy a relationship.
Yeah, 1,000%.
People do that shit with buyers. They send a deal out and a buyer says, I'll take it. And then someone else says, I'll pay you more. And they take the deal away from the first buyer and give it to the next guy. That first buyer will never buy from you again. My reputation and my relationships with people are way more important than the extra 5 or 10K on any given deal.
Yeah.
So integrity is super important in this business. And there's too many slimy guys who care more about the money than the relationship. So be one of the guys that, again, principles, man. It's a really important part of my business and my life, right? But anyway, be one of the guys that has integrity and does good business and is reliable and follows through on his commitments. Anyway, I realized after I sold the deal, I'm like, fuck, I didn't even need to send it to my buddy. I could have sold this one on my own. Yeah. So I could have made twice as much money on that deal. And I was like a little disappointed, but whatever. We sold it. It's a done deal. But from that day forward, when I would find a deal, I would market it myself and find the buyer and do the back end paperwork. And then I started learning about assignments and I started doing assignments, which made things a whole lot easier because you didn't have to have all this capital to buy the property. And then it just sort of took off from there. Meanwhile, I'm still working as a realtor. I haven't mentioned this, but during this time, right, my business was more focused on residential traditional real estate.
Really?
So taking listings, working with buyers, showing houses, representing buyers and sellers in just traditional home sales. And I was also working with my buddy on all these investment deals. And then I started, buying a rental here and there, doing a flip here and there, doing wholesale deals here and there, kind of like in addition to my retail business. Because at the time, majority of my business was retail, and that's where most of my income was coming from. I really liked being a realtor and working with buyers and sellers, but I didn't love it. The investment stuff, I love, man. It's just, it's fascinating to me.
It's a game, like you said, man. It's so cool.
It's so fun, and I love interior design. So like remodeling houses and recreating a space and transforming it into this beautiful space for some family that's going to create memories there for a decade or two. That's really exciting and fulfilling to me, right? Yeah. Finding and negotiating deals off market. I love that. It's fun, bro. Like, it's just like, it feeds my spirit. It's just like selling deals, selling it out, they sell. It's like, all of it. It's just like, it's fun.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy? None of us realize it because we both love it, but that is not for everybody, by the way. A lot have art, and it's okay. Like, it's, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, it's kind of like day trading. It's not for everybody, like, it's not for someone who doesn't like instability. And it's the same thing with real estate. Even no matter how good your lead flow is, if you don't like love sales and negotiations and the back and forth and kind of like the psychology of the sale, you're going to have a little bit of a hard time, and maybe you can go into a little different niche. But dude, I don't know. I just wanted to bring that up. It's amazing.
Yeah. And there's so many different sectors of the business too. People think that that you have to be a fix and flipper if you want to invest in real estate. No, you don't. You don't have to be a wholesaler. You don't have to. There's a million different things. For some people, being a realtor is really fulfilling, and that's what they love doing. I liked it. I didn't love it. Money was good, but I found other things way more interesting and fun and profitable. Right. So yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do in real estate. You can be a developer and build. You flip land. You can buy notes. You can you kind of whatever. There's a million. Right? Yeah, lease options, buying whole apartments, commercial, single family residential, whatever. There's a bunch of guys doing creative financing now. It's really cool. It's not my core competency. I've done a few sub 2 deals and lease option stuff, but not something that I'm focusing my energy on, because I don't love the creative finance stuff. I know some guys that are just fascinated by it.
Yeah.
For me, it's like a little bit confusing. It makes my brain hurt. Maybe they're just smarter than I am. I don't know, but I like just simplicity in my deals. Yeah. But anyway, so I'm working as a realtor these years and kind of doing the investment stuff on the side, right? In addition to the traditional business. And then I joined this mastermind, which is where Raul and I met. And what year was that, man? Like 2016 or 17? I want to say it was like 2017.
I think it was like in a cold time. So it was either 2016 or I can't remember. I think it was 2017.
I think it was 17.
Yeah, it was 17.
So in 2017, I was at this kind of pivotal moment in my business and career path where majority of my income comes from the retail business over here. But my passion and what I really love doing is in the investment stuff. And, there's only so many hours in a day. And time is not refundable. Once time has passed, you don't get it back. So you have to be to be successful and create like true financial freedom. Like, you have to be intentional, incredibly intentional with your time and your energy, right? Because not only your time runs out on any given day, but your mental bandwidth. Like, we can only focus on so much shit in a given day or week. And it's really easy to get overwhelmed or burnt out if you're trying to do too much, or, you start getting sloppy, or you just can be mediocre at a bunch of random shit and not really like an expert.
Like a ninja. Yeah.
Not really like exceptional at one thing. And so I made this decision that I got to pick a direction. I got to focus on one thing, and I got to become exceptional at it. The Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell, great book, talks about that you need to have 10,000 hours invested in something to become an expert. Right. And I remember I read that book around that time and I thought, man, I don't know how many hours I have in it, but the more you focus on one thing, the faster you get to 10,000 hours, Agreed. And so if you're spread thin doing a bunch of different stuff, you might be good at a bunch of different stuff, but you're not going to be exceptional at any of them.
Yeah.
So I decided in 2017, around the time I joined that mastermind, that the retail business, which was the bulk of my income at the time, but not something I truly, truly loved and like couldn't get up fast enough to do in the morning, was something that I was no longer going to do. And I literally drew a line in the sand. And again, this is one of those scary moments where I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to replace my income, but I literally drew a line in the sand and I started telling people, I'm no longer taking listings. I'm no longer working with buyers. If I would get leads, they would just come to me naturally and I would just refer them out. And I would explain, I'm going to set you up with somebody that I know and trust who's going to do a good job for you. And I would refer them out, but I'm personally not going to show houses or represent you in any kind of sale moving forward. Right. I don't care if it's $1 million listing. I'm not doing it. I'm focusing.
That's focus right there. I love that.
Focusing 100% of my energy on investing and wholesaling and building my portfolio of rental properties, because my ultimate goal in all of this is to own as much real estate as I can and generate a huge amount of passive income so that I can do whatever I want to do. And work when I want to work and not work when I don't. And, that's true freedom, right?
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about that later. But, so I basically drew a line in the sand. I said, I'm not working as a traditional realtor anymore. I'm just focusing on investing. I joined this mastermind and I learned some more dynamic and depth, strategy about wholesaling and marketing. I started marketing fairly heavily. My business took off. It blew up, man, immediately when I did that.
Yeah.
Because that focus and intentional strategy was just awesome, right? And I remember I started marketing, and my good friend Justin Colby I was talking to him at the mastermind, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll start sending out some mailers. I'll do send out a couple thousand a month. Like, I don't want to spend too much because what if it doesn't work? I'm just going to send out a little bit. And back to that jumping off the cliff analogy, it's like, dude, go for it or don't fucking do it at all. You know what I mean?
I love that.
Love that. So Justin said, you need to start sending out 10,000 mailers every month, and you need to consistently do it for a minimum of 6 months. And he was like, JR, he's like, a lot of the guys getting into this, don't know how to wholesale a deal. They don't know how to comp a property, and they're trying to market, and figure it out. He's like, you know what to do with the leads. You know how to comp them. You know how to negotiate. You know how to close them, and you know what to do on the back end. He's like, this is a no-brainer. Start sending out 10,000 mailers. I'm so glad I pushed, because I sent out 10,000 mailers that month. The first deal that I got, I made $40,000 on.
Nice.
Okay. First deal was a $40,000 deal. I mean, it was one of the first leads that I got, which not everyone's going to have that luck.
Right. Bro, I'm telling you, there it goes again.
That was pretty lucky, but man, it was as soon as I started marketing, I was like, oh yeah, okay, this is it. And then the leads came in, and I learned how to track everything, which is just, that was something that Kent Clothier taught me, and Sean and this mastermind we were in together. I learned the importance and the value of tracking KPIs. If you don't have a pulse on the numbers in your business, you're just you might as well be throwing shit at a wall just to see.
Just go play blackjack, because it's
for real. It's since then, I always tell people tracking your numbers and your KPIs is invaluable, because I'll have months where I literally think, tell me if you relate to this. I'll have months where I think man, I am crushing it. This is a good month. I'm doing really well. And I'll look at my KPIs weekly or monthly or whatever, and I'll go, oh, shit, we were not that profitable this month. This is actually a shitty month.
Yeah.
And I'll have months where I'm discouraged. I'm feeling discouraged and defeated, and I don't feel like I'm doing very well, but I'll look at the numbers in black and white, and they don't lie. And
they don't lie.
I'm crushing it. And I'm going, wow, I thought I was having a bad month. And I'm party. And it's actually this is one of the better months of the year. It's really interesting. But so it literally, it removes any denial.
Yeah.
And it
tracking is
really have a pulse on my spending, my revenue, where I need to make moves, what I need to do to it helps me make decisions like a true CEO. If something's working, I scale it up. If something's not working, I cut it. It's
very
the
simple.
path is in the math. Very, very simple.
Yeah.
The path is always in the math. And those answers are really useful, right?
Yeah, dude. And I remember in that first, because me and you joined the mastermind, like that was my first mastermind when I met you too. And I remember seeing some presentations and I'm like, wow, these people have their numbers dialed in. And at that time, that was like, we were crushing it. Like things were going really well for us. I think that month we had done like 15 deals or some crazy shit like that. And I'm like, dude, our numbers, like I looked at my cousin who was my partner at the time. I'm like, dude, our numbers, I don't even know what these people are talking about, like, and I didn't believe what Kent or what anybody else was saying until we started looking. I'm like, holy shit, like who knows what we've missed out on? Like, who knows if we've done good or bad, like, and I don't know. I think somebody listening to this that's new, I don't want you to get like discouraged or lost about what we're saying. All we're saying is just keep track of your numbers. If you're a one-man show, don't get fancy. Literally an Excel sheet or a Google sheet will be perfectly fine. If you're like running a business already, use a P&L or just use an Excel sheet until you get a P&L. Like basically what JR is getting at is like, how much are you spending? How much money's coming in? What is it? What is the difference between that? I mean, it's that simple. And then as you spend more and as more comes in, there's a lot that goes in there. But at the end of the day, what book was it that I read that it was like, oh, this book by Jerry Weintraub, amazing book, that he said that his father taught him every day when you go out and sell newspapers, you put your income in your left pocket and your expenses in the right pocket, the money you have to spend in the right pocket. And if at the end of the day you take out your pockets and you got money, you had a good day. So it's in a simple manner, however is best for you, do something like that. I mean, that's key, Gio. That's fucking crazy.
Right on. Yeah. I'm a big direct mail guy. I do a lot of direct mail and it's been really good for me. And so like the simple KPIs that I track, I mean, I track a bunch of stuff, but like if you're new and you're like wondering like, what is a KPI, or you're just sending out some mailers and you're trying to figure out what should I be tracking, the easiest way, that you can make a little Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheets, and you want to track the number of calls you're getting, right? The number of calls that are coming in, number of leads, number of appointments that are being scheduled, number of appointments conducted, number of contracts you're getting, number of closings, and your profit per deal. Those are the simple ones that I would track, like, clockwork. Because those will tell you a lot, and you'll be able to see. I mean, you got to track it for a while, and then you start to see patterns, or you see if you have good months or certain zip codes you are performing better, then you scale up there or scale down in ones that aren't, that kind of thing. But anyway, we're not gonna get too crazy with the science of
that's a whole nother podcast in itself.
Yeah. But anyway, so as far as like my story, so I started sending out direct mail. I started doing a whole lot of wholesale deals. I started doing more fix and flips, and this entire time I've just been gradually adding properties to my rental portfolio. One of the things this is, I think, really important, and I don't hear, I guess I hear some people talk about it, but on a wholesaling podcast, I don't hear a ton of it. One thing that I think is incredibly important to mention is I see a lot of guys wholesaling properties. They come across deal after deal after deal after deal, good deals, and they don't keep any of them. And it's like, if you're not a buy and hold guy, I get it, right? But I personally, I can't wrap my mind around it. Like, why would I want to be involved in real estate and see all these great deals come by and cross my desk and not keep a single one of them? That to me makes no sense. Yeah. My goal again is to own as much real estate as I can possibly own and generate as much passive income as possible. Because even the most successful wholesalers that I know, they might have huge income, but that could change. That could change at any time. The market could change. The laws could change. Any of it can change, right? You could just have a bad year. And to have true financial freedom means that like that money's coming in and hitting your bank account, whether you're there or not. That's true freedom. And I know a lot of guys want to build, passive businesses where they hire teams, lead manager and acquisitions and dispo people and whatever else. And they think that and some do it successfully. I will say it. I've been there. I've tried it. It's not. It's again. That's not my thing. That's not how
for you. Yeah.
Not the vision for my life. But I was aware, kind of going into it, and even more so after I tried it, that I wasn't going to have a bunch of people working for me and making me a shitload of money while I'm off in Vietnam riding a motorbike through the country and having. It just wasn't going to work, dude. Like, people either get resentful or they get kind of envious if you're doing that, and they're just like making you all this money, but they could go off and do it for themselves. They're like, what the fuck am I working for this guy for? Or the other thing that happens, I've seen it happen. It hasn't happened to me personally, but I've seen it happen in other people's business and stuff, is they'll steal from you. Like you leave and they get resentful, or they start skimming money.
To me many times.
Yeah, it happens, dude. So like, I'm not delusional about this idea that I'm going to have a bunch of people working their ass off to make me rich while I'm off having fun in the Bahamas. You know what I mean? It just doesn't work that way. So the passive income has to come from rentals. Okay. Real estate owned. The passive business takes a long time to build. And even if you build it and you do it successfully, you're still going to have a ton of turnover. You're constantly going to be hiring, firing, training, delegating, managing, right? Teaching people. And,
it wasn't for you. It just wasn't for you.
Yeah. So anyway,
I think you were going for the rental.
I got to get my charger. Give me 1 sec.
Yeah.
My Mac's about to die. Sorry.
I'll pause it. All right.
So the other thing about building a business with a team is that it's a different business, right? It puts the owner in a totally different role.
Yeah.
So for me, one of the things that I figured out about myself when I was growing my business and kind of learning all this stuff is that I love doing deals. I love negotiating with sellers. I love being, designing houses and remodels and managing, to an extent, managing the contractors. I don't love managing the guys, but I don't mind. If we have good contractors, it's not so bad. But I don't love managing people in my office. I just don't. And frankly, I'm not very good at it. Marcus Lemonis, who is a brilliant business entrepreneur, says, that you have to know what you don't know. And I think that's really important when going into business. You have to know what your strong skill set is and where you're weak. And, for me, it's not that I'm bad at managing people, but I'm just not very good at it. And more importantly, I don't really like doing it. I don't want a bunch of people to deal with and discipline and you got different personalities and the cultural aspect of it, and like the culture that you create within your company, and people getting cliquey or turning on you, or
yes,
you got all these different sets of personalities and sets of problems to deal with. I don't want to deal with any of that. And I always look at when I think about goals or vision for my life, I try and reverse engineer everything. So I'll start with the end in mind. Right? We always hear Kent talk about that. Start with the end in mind.
The perfect day, things like that.
What does your ideal outcome look like? Yes. And then reverse engineer it backwards. And how do you get to where you want to be? You literally have to reverse engineer it. What do you need to do year over year to get to that goal, to achieve that goal? What do you need to do monthly, quarterly, weekly, daily, hourly? What's gonna get me to where I want to go? And when I look at my ideal lifestyle, dude, I'm like doing deals for a month or two and flipping a few properties and adding properties to my rental portfolio. And then I'm on a plane and I'm overseas somewhere exploring in the jungle, or, riding a hot air balloon over Cappadocia, Turkey, and then I'm coming back and I'm doing some deals and having fun. And then I'll work when I'm in town, and I'll travel and I'll do whatever the fuck I want to do, because that's the lifestyle that I want to live. Right. Yeah. And when I look at that and I reverse engineer that, it just, having a big team, it just doesn't fit the mold. It's not going to work for me. So I've accepted the fact, because I did try at one point to build a team, and I had a small team, and I didn't love it. And it was really, really challenging. And like I said, I didn't think I was great at being the manager. That role is different. I'm really good at doing deals. I'm really good at analyzing and underwriting properties and negotiating and managing the process of the deal. But I'm not really good at managing people, you know? And so that's not the role that I want to be in, because when you have a team, you're the manager.
Yeah,
That's the role. Different business, different role.
And what I think is awesome about what you said is that you tried it. You get me? Like, it wasn't like spoke out of non-experience. Like you spoke and made a conscious decision because you actually tried it, and you hired people and you had acquisition and this and that. And it's almost like the same thing that's gone on with me, and it's gone on with many people in this business world, in real estate or anything. Like, you try things, right? You try to get a team, it works, it doesn't, you like it, you don't, cool, you shift, you do something else. I love that JR is like, dude, I've accepted, like, I like to travel. You know, me as JR is like, dude, I like to travel 4 or 5 months at a time, and having a team at the office. And I think you're right, dude. It's not very realistic to think that a team in the wholesale business, want to stay and run things efficiently while you're on. I mean, I know there's pages and there's things online and there's people saying that it is, but I would say that's maybe 1% out of 100 business. I think maybe we'll be able to put. And I don't know about you or me. I don't want to be in that. I don't want to bank my life on that 1%. Right. I don't feel the same, but I feel like that's kind of like the method, and it kind of goes back to the beginning when I'm like, dude, there's something so cool about the way you look at life. Like, you figure out very quickly for you and not for you, and you do what's for you. And I'm reading this book called I actually just finished it today, called Managing Oneself by Peter Drucker, and he talks about of like how you can, the most optimal people in the world only work on their strengths. Like, but you only work on your strengths, and then your weaknesses are for other people or things. And I think you've done a really good job of that, and a lot of people listening to learn from some of those tips and mentalities that you've kind of accumulated over the time.
Yeah. Right on, man.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Let me ask you this. Like, kind of take it to like a big type of question. I know it's not like your style per se, but I think you'd appreciate the question just to get the mind turning. I say like $100 million. Like, in your mind, how do you get 100 mil?
How do I get 100 mil?
Yeah, like how do you become worth 100 mil, or how do you attain 100 mil? How do you earn 100 mil? Like, what industry? What are you thinking?
Oh, real estate. Yeah. Real estate. Real estate creates more wealth than I think any other industry. There's, tech and stocks are great, generational wealth builders. Yeah. But again, real estate is where my knowledge is and my skill set is. So I wouldn't think I'm going to go learn how to be a stock investor. I would try and, build an internet tech company, because that's just not my skill set. And I'd be starting from nothing. And honestly, all that shit is like, makes my brain hurt, like even thinking about it. Whereas real estate, it comes naturally, and I love it and I enjoy it. But yeah, I think with 100 million in real estate would be through commercial assets and multifamily, large.
Yeah, probably raising some capital and buying some money, buying some things like that. Yeah, JR, like, kind of like the last like question or two, and then we'll wrap this thing up. Let's say that you were to like lose all your money, Donald Trump went in there, wiped your shit, and you ain't got nothing, but you do know what you know. What would you do nowadays to kind of like start back up and get your first deal so that you can like pay bills? Like, let's say you got, I don't know, $500 to your name in your pocket or whatever. What would you do nowadays to like get your first deal and start getting the wheels turning again?
Yeah. So that's a good question. $500, not a lot. So that wouldn't be, I spent a lot more than that on direct marketing. Yeah. Even when I was just starting out. So that wouldn't go very far with marketing. Cold calling, texting is fairly cheap. So those might be good marketing channels, but man, door knocking, like I said, people, I talked about earlier that I create opportunities out of thin air and capitalize on things where there, it just didn't even seem like there was an opportunity there. And so, for example, I remember a deal I did years ago when I was first starting to like wholesale properties. My landscaper and I were having a conversation. He was at my landscaper at my personal house. And he said, just casually in conversation, the neighbor over there told me she's thinking about selling her house. I said, oh, cool. Thanks for letting me know. And he left, and I walked across the street and I knocked on her door. And I said, "Hey, are you going to sell your house?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Have you listed it with a realtor yet?" She said, "No, not yet. I'm probably going to meet with some this week." I said, "Would you mind, before you do that, just letting me have a look around and I can make you a cash offer? I'm really interested in buying houses in the neighborhood." And she was like, "Yeah, that'd be great." And I ended up making a deal with her. And I don't remember, I think that was like a $12,000 assignment or something. I mean, it's like, so there's opportunity everywhere that doesn't cost a thing. You just have to be able to like keep your eyes open and listen for it, you
capitalize on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that is just like, just getting mentally ready that opportunities can come your way and will come your way. You know, it's like, that's a little hoorah for some people, but, to maybe put it in a practical perspective is just literally believe that, whatever you can do can turn into dollars. I mean, I think that's a very practical thing to just put in your mind. Like, okay, if people talk to me about business, I can find a way to turn it into money. If you think that on a constant basis, I'm not any force in the universe or anything, but I feel like you'll get more opportunities coming your way. Yeah. I don't know. What is your take on that? You think that could be, because things come your way? Is it? I know you're mentally ready for that shit, dude. It has to be.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some people call it law of attraction, whatever makes sense. But yeah, I think karma is real. I think we get back what we put out. And so if you have, a certain focus and you're pursuing something and you have good ethics and morals, I think, and good principles, I think good things come,
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. 100%.
Dude, that's awesome, man. Dude, yeah, this has been just such an amazing fucking, I don't know, just amazing chat. I mean, it's funny because this almost sounds like a conversation between me and JR regularly, like off air, maybe a little bit more bad words and stuff like that. But overall, it's just talking shit and like, and it's, I don't know, it's just so good and it's inspiring. I'm so glad I was able to get it on here. And so I know for sure it'll touch a lot of people. Dude, if people wanted to kind of like follow you or reach out to you, or maybe they're in Arizona or got some deals, or, maybe they just want to learn a little bit from you, how can people reach you or follow you or kind of get in touch with you?
Yeah, I've got social media. You can contact me on either social media account. I've got my Facebook page. Is my name, J.R. Piper.
Right.
And then I've got my Instagram handle is PipeDog84, and Pipe Dog is spelled PIPEDAWG 84. And Raul and I've talked about a little bit. I do a lot of travel. I honestly don't post that much real estate stuff, but I do just because I like to keep people informed of what I'm doing, or if I have something exciting going on, I'll throw it on there. But a lot of my social media stuff is like my dogs and my travel adventures. I've been all over the world, and that's my whole thing. At this point in my life, I'm just living the dream, bro. I feel really, really fortunate to be, where I'm at in life, and I'm excited about where I'm going. And, like I said, I'll be home for a few months working and doing deals, and then I'll be traveling and gone for a few months and having an adventure and, exploring the world and eating different foods and meeting people. And,
so amazing.
And I love it, man. I just love it. And
that's so amazing, dude. That's so inspiring. Like, I mean, if you listen to this dude and JR kind of like, just, if you listen this far, number one, you're like way ahead of the game, because so much shit that was talked about here is like not spoken about in regular conversations. But dude, it's just anyone with a dream and anyone with a little bit of passion and heart can kind of get to where JR is at, dude. It's not going to be easy, but I think it's pretty doable, man. It's pretty doable.
It's doable. It's doable. And not only is it doable, but I think it's really easy too, once you start having success, to continually exceed your own expectations. Like we talked about, like that, like some of those early assignment fees, making 5 and 10 grand is like the most exciting thing in the world. I'll close a deal next week. We were just talking about this before the podcast started. I'll close the deal next week. I'll net over $100,000 on
amazing.
One deal. I have, you constantly are striving for, like in me, right? In my life, I'm constantly striving for excellence and improvement. Perfection is not attainable. So I don't want to frustrate myself by trying to achieve it. I know that I'm going to make mistakes and slip up along the way, but I'm constantly striving to be better and to continue to learn and grow. And again, I talked about this a lot. My principles are really important to me. So I've implemented into my business and my relationships with people what I consider are like ethics and morals that I feel very strongly about. I want to be dependable and someone that people respect and all that, you know, but so I try and be a good guy, right, in life, and you know, I gradually just continue to grow the business, and I'm constantly resetting my baseline of what is acceptable to me in life, right? We talk about living an exceptional life and living well, and so, you know, like right now I have you know, I'm really fortunate. I've built a good size rental portfolio. I own single family homes. I own some multifamily apartment complexes, and I own some commercial buildings in downtown Phoenix. And I'm like really grateful for what I have, but man, I'm nowhere near where I want to be. So I'm constantly resetting that bar a little bit higher. As I achieve a new goal, I'm resetting new goals and raising the bar, and I'm constantly doing that. And I think a lot of my self-worth comes from not even so much the financial success that comes with all of that, but in just setting goals and achieving them and pushing myself and feeling like I'm achieving things in my life that, you know, not that many people get to do, and that are going to pay off big time in the span of my life, you know?
Dude, I love that. Sorry, man. He said it perfectly. It's like perfection is not attainable. Charlie Munger says, you know, which is one of the richest men in the world, partners of Warren Buffett. He says, dude, the formula to success, go to bed a little smarter, a little better than the day before. Yeah. So, you know, it's just those little tiny increments. And Jared's been able to do that shit and achieve a ton, even though he's very humble about it, has achieved a ton. But that's an awesome way to.
I'll say too, you know, like that whole mindset of like, I could have done better. That can be a double-edged sword, right? Like it's real easy when I have a bad month or I screw up a deal or I miss an opportunity that I clearly should have taken. It's real easy to beat myself up and get frustrated with myself for making those mistakes. But here's the blessing in all of that, right? And this is part of the reason that tracking KPIs is so important. When we have down months, it's really easy to just bury our head in the sand and ignore it or pretend it's not happening. That's just human nature, right? But making mistakes and allowing ourselves or even forcing ourselves to acknowledge the pain associated with those mistakes, it will help us grow, right? So looking at KPIs, if I have a down month, I'm looking at it going, wow, this is not good. Like we got to fix this. You know what I mean? Yeah. If my whiteboard's not full of deals, I gotta get some addresses. I gotta get some deals up there, right? Yeah. I'm not gonna keep the old ones up there so that I feel okay about it. I want to see it, right? And so, you know, pain is a lot like a reminder, right? So, like for example, in Arizona, you know, the temperatures here in Phoenix get up to 110, 115, even 120 degrees Fahrenheit in the summertime. It's brutally hot in the summer, and if you go outside in 110 degree weather with bare feet on, it will burn your fucking feet, right? And so that pain is really a blessing, right? Because although it's painful and it's uncomfortable, what it's doing is it's reminding you that you need to move your ass, right? You need to sprint off that pavement and get to the grass or get to the interior, you know,
I like that.
Surface that's not hot. So it's a reminder that you need to move and do something differently. Okay. And so in my business and in my life in general, when I feel pain or when things are not going well or when I make mistakes, those are great reminders that I need to do something differently. I need to adapt and overcome and figure it out, you know?
Yeah, that's good, bro. That was a really good analogy. I love that. You're full of good quotes, man. I love it. I didn't realize that about you. Full of good quotes. Dude, I think that's just such an awesome way to kind of put those finishing touches to end this thing up. I mean, I don't know. Honestly, you can't say it any better than that, dude. Like we've covered so much good shit that, like, you know, from business and life and decisions and principles, and you know how it doesn't matter how low you and your life can get or how high you can get. You know, you have to kind of just continue forward, man. If you're at your rock bottom right now and you're listening to this, dude, so was JR, so was I at one point. Like that happens, man. You can come up. if you're at your high point right now, JR said a bunch of things like stay humble, right? Like, he does super well and has months that he does extremely well. And you just stay humble because you don't know if you go back to that low or you're going to go anything, dude. You honestly don't know. So I'm just going to leave it with that. And again, if you guys are in the Arizona area, feel free. I mean, reach out to JR, dude, by social media. I'll put it on the description here. I'm sure he would love to JV deals with you or help you out. He's a genuine dude. So, and I appreciate you for coming on again, man. I know this is not the most comfortable thing for you, but it was really fun. It was really fun for me.
It's all good, man. I love chatting with you, Raul. I love you, bro. So
I appreciate you, man. Yeah, dude. I'll be in Arizona soon too. But thank you guys for listening to this, man. If you're listening to this on iTunes, check me out on YouTube to watch the video, Raul Bolufe, or on the website, raulbolufe.com. Other than that, I'll catch you guys on the next episode. Peace, man.